What is up? Around the Octagon is back. Today we're here to break down UFC Rio. Also talk a bit about UFC 320. What an electric card. Today I am joined by Son and Ryan. Boys, how are we doing?
Great weekend, man.
Yeah, one hell of a weekend. And I think it's only fitting that we pick up with that. Alex Poatan Pereira is the new light heavyweight champion of the world. What a hell of a performance Poatan put out. Just putting away Magomed Ankalaev within the first minute and a half. Just walked right through him from the second that fight started. Took the center line. More than that. Took 70, 75, 80% of the cage. Landed big shots. Ankalaev goes for the takedown. Doesn't get it. Ground and pounds him out. Right there. There we go. And new. Once again, Alex Poatan Pereira. And Son, I'll direct this one towards you. What is next for Poatan?
Man, I would love, and as far as I can see, this is kind of what seems to be brewing right now is an Alex Pereira and Jon Jones fight. Because not only did Jon Jones call for this fight months and over a year ago even, but Alex had that moment of silence for his brother that passed away after the fight, which was something that I noticed that was, one, extremely, respectful out of Alex's side. It shows you the character of that guy, but it's also, on the same side of that coin, a business move, because you saw, in the lead-ups to Tom Aspinall, Jon Jones, which never happened, obviously, but in the lead-ups to that, and the press conferences that, Tom Aspinall was, kept bringing up Jon Jones, the one thing Jon Jones would always mention is he doesn't respect Jon Jones, and there's so much disrespect from a guy who's accomplished nothing and da-da-da-da-da-da. And there was a big point about, how much respect he doesn't have for Tom Aspinall and vice versa. So I think that was a double-sided thing, a double-edged sword there, where Alex is almost setting up that fight by showing respect to Jon Jones and showing him, hey, I respect you. Obviously, you respect me because, I've accomplished so much. Alex has already said, prior to these Ankalaev fights and prior to losing his belt to Ankalaev, that he does want super fights. And who else is a bigger name in the UFC at that weight class other than Jon Jones? So I think that absolutely makes sense. I think, not only Brazil, but America and the whole world loves Alex Pereira. So I think it only makes sense to do Jon Jones and Alex at the White House this next year. And then, obviously that also gives that one buffer fight for Alex moving up in weight class to heavyweight, and then gives him, if he wins, a rightful shot at that title.
Yeah, Son. I mean, I'd love to see it, and I mean, hopefully, by all accounts, that does pan out. I like the timing. I like everything about it. So I guess in the meantime, I guess they'd throw Olberg Yuri or maybe Olberg someone else for a vacant light heavyweight strap, and then regardless of the outcome, because obviously you can't have Jon Jones will never cut back to 205 again, and then Alex Pereira, I'm sure they'll make that a heavyweight fight. So you just have those two guys bang it out, probably like an Olberg versus Yuri for a vacant belt. Honestly, at this point, I'd say hopefully Olberg gets it done, beats Yuri for that vacant title weight belt, and then Alex Pereira comes back to, I guess, reclaim his belt, even though lineally it's his.
Yeah, Son, I do like the Jon Jones call, and we were texting back and forth about it earlier today, and I kind of changed my tune on it a little bit since then. So the thing with Jon Jones versus Alex Pereira is I think there's two ways that they can make it, one of which is Poatan going up to heavyweight, which seems like he wants to do. I know he was talking to Dana White about it. If they do that and they want to throw that on the White House card, the way that they are able to do that without it being a title fight is you stamp it as the BMF title fight. There you go. That's their cheeky way of matching them up and having it really mean something, or at least appear to mean something. And the other way they can go about it is if Jon is like, you know what, I want to fight Poatan, I'm going to go and fight you at fucking 205 light heavyweight. Let's get after it. Now that would be absolutely the most exciting thing that I can think of, seeing them compete for a legitimate UFC championship belt. That would be absolutely awesome. But I do like that Jon Jones call out. And Ryan, I think you made a good point there with Olberg and Yuri. Then they can go and fight for that vacant strap. And there you go. Problem solved, Son. You want to add something there?
Yeah, just to speak on the belt, and whether there's a belt involved or not, I don't think anybody really cares, to be very honest with you. I think like sure it's the belt, and I don't think you need to put it even as a BMF belt or
Bro,
anything.
there's no way that they make that fight and at least do not stamp it with the BMF title fight. There is no way on earth. I just do
I
not
mean, taken
see it
away from
happen.
who? Is it Max Holloway that's got it right now?
It doesn't matter. It's a makeshift bullshit belt. So if you're gonna have a makeshift bullshit belt, at least use it for two of the baddest motherfuckers on planet Earth. This is literally the BMF belt, the baddest motherfucker, John Jones versus Alex Pereira. Like that makes sense. That should be what the belt was actually made for. These are the two baddest motherfuckers on planet Earth. Like that's literally
That
what the
is
name of the
true.
belt is. But
That is
I,
true.
I know you might not need to have one, but if you're not going to have it there, then you're going to have a title fight on the card somewhere, and then you're going to have to pay more champions. So how do you want to go about doing it? You could stamp this as the BMF fight, and I think that's kind of a cheeky way where you could headline it. You don't have to have other title fights necessarily on the card, and they are the two baddest motherfuckers on planet Earth, so it does make sense.
Yeah,
But
100%. I can definitely see that.
I do get your point too, because even if there isn't a belt, I'm still watching it. So
Yeah.
does it matter to me? I guess I made an argument for it, so I guess it has to matter a little bit to
It
me.
does have to matter. It has to matter a little bit.
Fuck yeah, I guess I just caught myself. And moving on, Merab Dvalishvili, one hell of a win over Cory Sandhagen. He's officially cleared out everyone there outside of Mario Batista if he is able to beat Umar Nurmagomedov. And Ryan, I'll let you start this one off. Is the winner of that rightfully fighting for this belt next?
Yeah, I mean, I'd assume so. I just not much. I know Merab also called out for Petr Yan in December, so that could be the fight to make next. I know Merab wants to be very active, and Petr Yan, I think, has done everything right in terms of getting his way back up to a title shot. He fought Song Yadong, beat him, fought Davison Figueiredo, beat him. I think there's one more name I'm missing in there, but I mean, this guy's pretty much had to scratch and claw his way back to a title shot against Merab, and I think he's ultimately earned it. Now, December might be a little bit tough, given that we're just entering October. So that gives you like 2.5 months to really turn things around. So it's like almost you're immediately just beginning camp to train for a guy who shot 49 takedowns on you in his last 25-minute bout. And to that point, the only other one I like outside of that is, the winner of Umar Nurmagomedov versus Mario Batista. Outside of the broken hand in their first fight, I'd say Umar was having some pretty good success in rounds 1 and 2, took both rounds off of him. So definitely a competitive fight. I don't know how much it plays into it just because Merab's cardio really dominated that fight going in the rounds 3, 4, and 5. But it is a little asterisk, I guess, in that title defense that Merab's probably looking to get back. And then in terms of the fight itself against Cory Sandhagen, I would say Cory Sandhagen did just about everything right going into round 2. Round 1, I think he fought a very good competitive round. And then who knew, man? Merab now has hands, it looks like. Was able to catch Cory and then just started laying on some pretty solid, like a pretty solid few combinations here, pretty smart, ripping to the body to try to get the hands down, then go into the head, not just head hunting the entire time. That surprised the hell out of me. And Cory, you could see, when he woke back up in rounds 4 and 5, I think there was one point where he tried actually going for that 50-50 and Merab shot back up and stood back up, didn't look to get any control. And I think it was pretty close going into round 5. I thought it was a 10-8 for Merab in round 2, but had it been a 10-9 and Cory won round 5, I think we might be looking at a different guy holding the belt here. But in terms of what we do next, I'd like to see that Yan fight. Personally, I think Yan, like I said before, he's done everything in his power to get back to a title shot. I think he's earned it. I'd say January. I think December. I know Merab's very active, but not everyone is like Merab. He's the machine for a reason. Give him January, end of January, maybe February. I'd like to see Merab get back in the cage then. Depending on who knows. I think depending on what happens with the outcome of both guys, Mario Batista and Umar Nurmagomedov come up bloody in their next fight, I think Jan's probably the next guy in line for that belt.
Yeah, you definitely made some really good points there, Ryan. Where I do disagree is the January fight, though. Although it would be nice, I think they're almost setting up a Ilya fight maybe in the beginning of the year. But I would love to see Merab to break that record of 4 title defenses in 1 year. I think that's what he's going for. He mentioned it. He's like, yeah, I want to go for the 4. And who else as a champion is going to be able to be as active as Merab and as effective in the last fight as he is? I mean, if you put him in a short notice fight this weekend, I have a feeling he would be perfectly fine, like 100%. Obviously not 100%, but I feel like he would be able to defend his belt, against probably pretty much anybody except for maybe Umar right now, on a 1 week notice. So who else but Merab as a champion? I mean, I don't see anybody that has been a champion in the past to be able to make a quick turnaround as Merab would be able to in December. And I say, you know what? Fuck it. I mean, Merab's done enough for the UFC, and he's confident enough, and he really just showed us this weekend how good he is in the striking as well. He's not just a takedown guy now. He's not holding people down. I mean, he's working offensively very, very well against the best strikers in the world. And let him do it, dude. I say let him do it. If I'm Dana, I'm letting him do it. If he wants to turn around in 2 months, who else is going to do it? Who else is going to break that record other than Merab? So I say go for it. I will say also on the Mario Batista Usman fight, I think that's an extremely exciting fight. I know some people still aren't the biggest fans of Mario. I think his last fight, I think it was against Pitbull. Patchy, sorry. Kind of showed a different light to him. We kind of got all those bandwagons on Patchy onto Mario's side now. Is kind of what it seemed like. The hate isn't really turned towards him as much, and I expect a banger. So I feel like that fight, you can just kind of tell that an Usman and Mario fight's going to be bloody on both sides. So it only makes sense to kind of give a buffer to Petr Yan, let both of those guys rest up, and then in the second quarter of 2026 we toss in Merab back in there.
Yeah, so for him to fight in 2025, it will almost certainly have to be Petr Yan, which I'm fine with them doing that. Like you talked about, Son, I think it'd be cool to see Merab break the record. I'm not that interested in the fight itself, to be honest. I don't think it's any different than their first fight. Merab landed 24 takedowns. Probably do about the same. I think he runs through Petr Yan unless Petr can catch him with something, which seems to be about the only way to beat Merab Dvalishvili right now. But I also like that you do touched on Mario Batista versus Umar Nurmagomedov. I think that is a very fun fight there. I'm intrigued to see what Umar would look like in a rematch here with Merab, because it seems like really there's 2 ways to beat Merab, actually. Earlier I said one, either you starch him, knock him out, or you have to have such good cardio through 3 rounds where you're able to steal those first 3, and then you'll give up 4 and 5. Maybe Umar could pull out a decision against Merab if he is able to stir up that cardio a little bit more to squeak out that 3rd round, because that 3rd round was very competitive. And then Merab started like emoting on Umar at the end, and it got a bit ugly there. But maybe Umar is the most competitive fight, I believe. But maybe Mario Batista, man. Let's see what he looks like against Umar, and then we'll figure it out then, dude.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
That's what I was going to say. I think he's going to impress us all in that fight. Yeah. And I think it's not worth looking past Mario. I think he's a very, very strong challenger for Umar, and I think it'd be a very exciting fight for him and Merab.
Yeah, I agree. There's no need to look past Mario because he certainly has surprised some people as a sizable underdog before. But moving on to the last fight we will talk about regarding UFC 320, and that is Yuri Prochazka found the knockout over Khalil Rountree. Rounds 1 and 2 were all Khalil. It was 2018 across all 3 judges' scorecards, and then Yuri Prochazka was able to weaponize cardio and just put a pace on Khalil Rountree that Khalil was unable to sustain, and Yuri Prochazka found that finish with just under 2 minutes left in the 3rd round. And now, Ryan, the question becomes, I know you talked about it earlier, where if Alex moves up, he will likely fight like a Carlos Ulberg, but Yuri Prochazka is ranked number 1 in the division. There's nowhere up you can go, but he can't fight the champion, so he can't go up if Alex Pereira is holding that belt. So what do they do? What happens here, Ryan?
Like I said, man, I think if you're Yuri, you're praying that Alex Pereira gets that super fight with John Jones and vacates his belt, because like you touched on, Zach, it's the only way. If he wins a vacant belt and has the light heavyweight strap, when Alex Pereira returns back to reclaim that after a fight against John Jones, or maybe even a Tom Aspinall at the White House, some other event, what have you. Yuri Prochazka is going to have to beat Carlos Olberg. I think that's the next fight you make if they do fight. If that John Jones fight falls out, give him Magomed Ankalaev, have Olberg fight for the belt. He'll fight the winner. Because I'm sure if Olberg goes out there and beats Pereira, I don't know if Pereira calls for the rematch or if he just decides to bulk up a little bit, go to heavyweight, say, you know, I've done enough at lightweight to cement my legacy in this division, which I already think he has, especially given the new era of fighting. Maybe why not try? Maybe if Tom Aspinall doesn't even have the belt, it's like, why not try to go against like a Cyril Gane if he gets that nod when they come fight October 25th this year? Why not try to go get 3 belts? No one's ever done it before. He's like middleweight to light heavyweight, and he's a big light heavyweight. He could put on some size, go up there. Yuri can try to do something in terms of light heavyweight still, but it all depends on what Alex Pereira does with his career at this point for Yuri to see another shot at the title. But I think Yuri's young. He's what 31, 32. So not too old for those bigger divisions. He also doesn't cut a lot of weight. He cuts like 5, maybe 6 pounds. I wonder if he'd be willing at all to maybe give 185 a go. I know he had entertained the idea after his last loss to Alex Pereira. Obviously, still making moves, still killing guys at 205, but the size does come into play, and 185 could be in his future if he wants to see another shot at this title. That's all I got for that. In terms of the actual fight itself, like you touched on, 2 rounds, first 2 rounds of the Khalil, it's looking like one-way traffic. I said the only thing Yuri did do well was invest in those body shots early, and then he just played the waiting game. I think he realized somewhere in that fight that Khalil didn't have the power that Alex had. So when he was getting hit with his big shots, he's like, oh, okay, like these aren't really putting me out, haven't sat me down. So I think that gave him a lot of confidence going into round 3, and then he just turned it up. He sensed Khalil was tired, used his cardio very well, didn't give Khalil a break when most fighters would. After landing a couple nasty shots, he would just immediately go back and teep kick to the body, invest in the body, just still zapping Khalil's cardio all the way up until the finish. So great fight for Yuri. Excited to see what he does next. And sucks to be Khalil Rountree right now, I guess. I finished that.
Yeah, I will say I'm a little bit sour about that fight just because I had Khalil in a very big parlay piece. That's the only leg I missed there to win me a few $100. But what I do hate more than that is the comments of people just saying, you know, Yuri's stupid. Oh, like who does this guy think he is? Like this guy just thinks he's a samurai. All this stuff. I think this weekend we really saw who Yuri was. He really embodied who he was as a fighter, as a person. He really put his character out there for all of us to see. I saw a breakdown that online that went something similar to this. You know, people call him stupid. People call him, you know, whatever. But we have a guy here that legitimately thinks he's a samurai. He leads his day every single day, you know, honoring that code that he lives by. Goes trains out in the middle of the woods. He's punching trees. You know, he's very spiritual about the way he fights. You know, it's like a big cornerstone of his fights of who he is as a person, as all UFC fighters are. But for him, he just kind of takes it a step further. It's like a Miyamoto Musashi type of code to live by. And he thrives in those moments where it's so 50-50 that we saw in Khalil Rountree fight this weekend. It's so 50-50, you know, take one and give one. Your back's against the wall, and he just kind of puts himself through the flames and believes in his warrior spirit or whatever it may be so much that he kind of comes out with his hands raised. And he kind of puts it all out there every single time. I don't think he has a single performance that he should be ashamed of, and that he even has the opportunity to be ashamed of. So props to Yuri, man. I was pretty sour about that loss just because I picked against him. But, man, like, what a way to embody yourself as a fighter. I don't think there's any better way that Yuri could have finished that fight. You know, he could have been winning the first 2 rounds. It would not have been the same as he did. Just pulls it out of the fire. Believes in himself, puts himself in those 50-50 situations, bets on himself, and wins. You know, the way of the samurai, or whatever you want to call it. That guy's legit. I love the way he fights. I love everything about him, man. Very, very tough to root against Yuri Prochazka. So I'm hoping, he does fight Olberg, or if he doesn't fight Olberg, they just put him right back up against Alex. I think he deserves it. I think, we definitely saw two guys that were absolutely evolved after losing to Alex, and came back and fought in the middle of that octagon and put on an absolute show. And we saw obviously who the winner was. So give Yuri whatever he wants.
Yeah, 100%. I think that was very well said by both of you boys. And I'll have one thing I'll add, and it's really just I'm kind of surprised. Well, not surprised, but it showed you how much, like cardio-wise, when you're in control of a fight and you're able to control someone else, how like little cardio you use. Like you look at Khalil Rountree versus Jamal Hill, for example. He went all 5 rounds, and people would look at that and be like, he went 5 rounds. He has great cardio, but he was just in control of the entire fight, and Jamal Hill wasn't making him work. And then when you look at how Khalil fought against Yuri Prochazka and how Yuri was able to just put the pace on him, and you could see Khalil in round 3 struggling. So it is interesting to look at it and kind of see the difference between when you're in control compared to when someone else is, and how that impacts your cardio and whatnot. But moving on to UFC Rio, a card that I am very fucking pumped to get into, boys. And starting us off is a fun one, a featherweight bout between the Brazilian Lucas Almeida opposing a friend of the pod, Michael Texas Kid Aswell. Michael Aswell is coming in as the minus 150 favorite. And if you watch him fight, he puts an absolute pressure on people. His output is crazy. He's young. He's in your face. The cardio's there, and he's looking to wear you out. Son, I'll let you start this one off, my friend. Where are you going? Let me take a guess. You going with Aswell?
Yeah, I think there's no other way to go about it. I think the interview we did with him last week, that's up on our channel, absolutely showed and gave me even more confidence in him this weekend. And the fact that the line is so close, it just makes me want to hurl my wallet at it, especially by finish. Just the way this guy fights is incredible. He's just going out there swinging, putting the pace on people. Not to mention he trains with Joshua Van, another guy that's been putting on absolutely impeccable performances recently over the last year or so. It's just crazy. I mean, talking to this guy, he's so confident in his abilities. He knows he's going to go in there and scrap. It's not like he's going to, of course he has his game plan, but his game plan is go in there, make it as dirty as fucking possible, and come out with his hand raised. And, he's going to throw those bombs too. So that's exactly what I'm expecting this weekend. I think Michael Aswell takes him in the 2nd or 3rd round by knockout. I'm expecting it. I'm wishing it happens, and I'm certainly going to be there on Saturday to watch it.
Yeah, Son, that's very well said. Didn't have the pleasure of interviewing Mr. Aswell, but friend of the pod, friend of mine, I guess now. So I am also going to be side with Michael Aswell here. I think taking on Balaji Oki on, like a week's notice, maybe a few days notice is no tall task for anyone in the featherweight division. Was very competitive in that fight, lost a split decision, I believe. And I'm excited to see.
I think it was a close UD, yeah.
Close UD. Anyway, I'm excited to see what this guy looks like coming out with a full training camp, especially against a guy like Lucas Almeida, who's had a pretty up and down career in the UFC. This is Lucas Almeida is the type of guy you'd like to get as a UFC debutante fight. So I think Michael Aswell pulls this off. The line being close, given his first loss in the UFC, makes this even better, as you said, San. So I'm trusting the slight favorite here in Michael Aswell to get this one done.
Yeah, Son, I think you hit it on the nail, or hit the nail on the head there. Is that? Yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah, I had 2 different phrases in mind, and I almost crossed them, but we're good. Yeah, Michael Aswell's pace, his cardio, just the way he's able to impose himself in the octagon is extremely impressive. You even look at his contender series fight to Bogdan Grad, one in which I thought he won. He outstruck Bogdan Grad by over 56 strikes, and he is just fucking there in your face the entire time. He does not go away. I watched some of his other fights where it's 4th round and it's a close fight. It looks like he's getting beat up a little bit, and then he's still just fucking there in your face, just weaponizing his cardio, because he has very good cardio too. And he throws, his output is just tremendous. So I'm curious to see what type of effect that will have on the 34-year-old and Lucas Almeida here. Now that 34 years old is very old by any means here, but Michael Aswell, 9 years younger than him here, and he's also fought some very good competition there in the cage. I think Michael Aswell was more than prepared for the matchup here with Lucas Almeida, and I'm also going Michael Aswell here. I think he gets it done either round 2, round 3 knockout, like you touched on there, Son, or a UD, one in which I think he just completely outstrikes Lucas Almeida, has 50, 60, 70 more 6 strikes, and we're sitting there on Saturday texting each other, fucking pumped up about that Michael Aswell performance. And now moving on, we stay in the featherweight division. We have a bout between Ricardo Ramos taking on Khan. Khan is looking for his first UFC win, I believe, opposing Ricardo Ramos, who is coming off a loss to Chepe, who is a tough fighter, one in which Ricardo Ramos looked pretty decent in. So I'm curious to see how he looks coming out here. And Ryan, the floor is yours, my friends.
Yeah, Zach, I'm happy you touched on that Chepe Mariscal fight. I'm going with the native Brazilian here to get it done in front of his home crowd on a main card, kicking it off. He'll be the first Brazilian to win on the main card tonight, at least in my eyes. And like you said, touching on that Chepe Mariscal fight, it's a tall task for any fighter to fight Chepe Mariscal. This guy's put together a very sneaky 5 to 6 fight win division in his UFC career and in featherweight. Very tough guy, very durable guy, pretty well-rounded, and should be fighting in the rankings come relatively soon, end of the year, if not next year. So a loss to Chepe Mariscal ages very well. And then in terms of what he's done throughout the rest of it, Josh Kulabau is a pretty sizable win. And then his other losses, Charles Jourdain, no shame in that. Charles Jourdain's pretty much shown that outside of like your Gene Silvas and your Ilia Toporias, that guy is very hard to beat, especially in like dominant fashion. Not the biggest fan of Khan Ofli coming in here. Tough fight against Muhammad Naimov, but we've seen Muhammad Naimov break under pressure, and Ofli just wasn't able to get it done. And by those two things alone, I'm leaning for the guy with the home side or the home crowd on his side that night. It's like fighting two people out there when you fight in Brazil.
Yeah, I am fully with you here, Ryan. Not only do I like Ricardo here in this fight, he has been having a decent UFC career, at least better than Khan. He is from I just saw his city where he's from and where he's fighting out of is like 20 or 30 to 45 minutes from where I grew up when I was living back in Brazil when I was born. So I cannot go against my hometown person. He's close enough. I used to go get, lunch and dinner there all the time. So I know exactly the city he's from. I know what it's like over there. I know this guy can pull it out of the fire. And like you said, Ryan, when you're fighting in Brazil, you're fighting two guys in there, especially when he's got that home crowd behind you. The only thing that really kind of worries me is that Khan Ofli's name is Genghis Khan Ofli. But luckily, nicknames aren't in there to help you, nor are they coaching you. So I'm going Ricardo Ramos as the first Brazilian to win in this main card as well.
No, Genghis Khan is actually such a fly fucking nickname to have. Like,
it's so tough.
I do love that.
I didn't know that. That's fucking awesome.
Yeah, dude, that is
Well,
pretty fucking
Turkish,
sweet. He
bro.
must be an absolute.
He's not even Mongolian.
Yeah, and Khan Ofli's this fucking Australian dude. So I don't even know what's going on here, man. But I'm also gonna side here with Ricardo Ramos. I also like the size advantage here of Ramos. I like the reach advantage there of him. I think he's put in a position to win here in front of his home crowd, and I think he can win about anywhere this fight goes. I think he will more than likely be the more offensive grappler here. I think he can outstrike Genghis Khan here. So I am going to make that a clean sweep. And now moving on, we have two heavyweights clashing between Jonathan Denise and Mario Pinto. Mario Pinto, I will say, boys, he's not really a true heavyweight. He could probably be making 205 if he really wanted to, where Jonathan Denise is that pure heavyweight. So my question for you, Son, is do you see the size being a problem here for Mario Pinto?
I don't know, man. I'm having kind of a tough time picking this one. Weight-wise, it does look like Pinto does weigh a little bit more. In the size, he's a little bit taller. But he's just had more success as far as putting people out. He's got that KO over Austin Lane, and Jonathan Denise does not. Also, another reason that I will be picking Pinto here, another reason I want Pinto to win is his last name's hilarious. In Portuguese, Pinto means dick, and I think that's awesome. So I'm going Mario Pinto here to win by a dick slap knockout. I'm not too worried about the size here. Like you do make a good point, but we also have an age advantage here. Denise kind of seems like he slows down a little bit, which is why a lot of his fights go to decision. Not able to, unless he gets knocked out, but he's not able to, put out power. In Mario's 10-0, I like that undefeated record, and I go back and forth with it, but I do feel pretty confident in the 27-year-old here with Mario Pinto. So I'm siding with him. Underdog, I think he's plus 100 right now. So definitely a decent parlay piece.
Yeah, so in this case, I'm going the opposite direction. I'm going with another Brazilian and Renato Denise. Outside the Martin Tybura fight, the guy had everything going for him in the world. Doctor stoppage on that one. And then he fights Alvin Hines, a guy making his UFC debut. Turns out Alvin Hines was on steroids, and the amount of shots Renato Denise threw to that guy and hit him with that should have put any other fighter down, heavyweight or otherwise, it was ridiculous. And I think when you see that and this guy's just coming at you, walking forward, and you're peppering with your best shots, hitting him with some hard rights, hard lefts, and the guy just keeps coming forward, not deterred by anything, it's going to zap your cardio a little bit. But, credit to him, he was able to hang in there and get out the decision, by unanimous decision. And I just think he's better overall technically. While he might not have the flashiest moves by any means, the guy's very good at what he does, just the 1-2, the teeps to the body, the leg kicks, and then the body kicks. And he does it very well, and he's pretty technically defensively sound when it comes to the striking department. So I think, especially if this goes to a decision with some Brazilian bias, crowds cheering the entire time, every time he lands, I can see Renato Denise winning this one by UD, if not a finish in the latter half of the fight.
Yeah, I'm also going to side with Renato Denise here. And one thing I want to note is, first off, Renato Denise has very good kickboxing. I like that you touched on the fact that who did you just fight, Ryan? Who the fuck was his name again?
Alvin
that
Hines.
was all juiced up. Yeah, I like that you touched on Alvin Hines being juiced up there. I think that's a big part. And then on the flip side of that, you look at Mario Pinto, his fight against Austin Lane. First and foremost, I think Austin Lane is absolutely awful, terrible. And Austin Lane, I think Mario Pinto was a minus 800 favorite. Austin Lane was fucking him up in that first round. He had Mario Pinto hurt. He knocked him down. He was outstriking him. Mario Pinto comes out round 2, puts away Austin Lane. I'm not too confident in the 10-0 that is Mario Pinto. Therefore, I will be siding with Renato Denise here, and I will be going Denise via knockout. I think the kickboxing there, I think Pinto could be a little not completely sold on the chin after that Austin Lane fight, so I'll be going with Renato Denise. And now, moving on, we have a welterweight bout between Vicente Luque and Joel Alvarez. Joel Alvarez makes the move up from 155 to 170, one in which I think was very much needed. He is a fucking huge 155er, so I think 170 will suit him a little bit better. On the flip side of that, you have Vicente Luque as a massive, massive underdog coming off a very tough submission loss to Kevin Holland. So we shall see how Vicente Luque bounces back. And San, I know you're a Luque guy. I know you've talked about Vicente Luque. Are you taking him at this steep of a line?
Yeah, I mean, I made a very strong case for him in that Kevin Holland fight. I really did like what I saw in his last few fights. But now that I look at it, having the hindsight in it, he's had a pretty tough last 3 years. He loses to Kevin Holland earlier this year. Then last year he had one fight, 2 canceled fights, but one ultimately with Themba Gorimbo, who he beat by submission, who's a guy that we now see is not as advanced as we thought he was, or as much of a prospect as we thought he was. And then back in 2023, he beat an old-ass RDA by decision, which, obviously RDA is a very durable guy. But we got to think, how long he's been in the UFC and what type of wear and tear that does to your body. As far as I can see, he's been in the UFC since 2015, which puts him at about 10-year career with the UFC. It's very, very tough to fight at the highest level possible for that long, especially when you started so young at 23 years old. So I'm having a very tough time siding with him here, and along with the fact that Joel Alvarez is just a big dude, and obviously has had a lot of success in his last few years, a lot of wins by knockout. a win by submission or two. So he's just had a very, very strong resume here in the UFC. And I think he's coming into his prime at 32 years old, which Vicente Luque is falling out of his prime in his 32, 33 years old right now, which is crazy to think that these guys are the same age. But you kind of just look at the wear and tear that Vicente Luque has endured throughout the years. It's tough to look past that. So I got Joel Alvarez even by finish this weekend. Unfortunately, as much as I hate to see it, because I am a big fan of Luque. But you can't be a legend forever.
Yeah, Son. I mean, I think you hit pretty much every point that I would have even tried to touch on when it comes to talking about Joel Alvarez. I'm also going with the heavy favorite here come Saturday night. I really don't have much to add after what you just put out. I'd just be pretty much repeating all talking points, but I loved your breakdown of that. I'd say the only thing I'd say is his only real loss in the UFC is to Arman Tsarukyan, and no shame in that. That guy should be fighting for a belt. So, yeah, give me the young buck, semi-young buck.
Arman did fuck him up, but it is what it is. Put that behind you. Arman Tsarukyan is the cream of the crop. And Joel Alvarez, 22 finishes, 22 wins, 22 finishes. This guy is fun to watch. He's hunting for the finish, and I'll make it the clean sweep on Joel Alvarez. Nothing needed to add there. And now we have an interesting one. Moving on to the bantamweight division, we have a matchup between Deiveson Figueiredo and Montel Jackson. Montel Jackson is a guy that I'm a big fan of. Although he's not too active in the octagon, this is his second appearance of the year. And this is also the second appearance of the year for Deiveson Figueiredo. Figgy is coming off getting his knee blown out just 6 months ago. So I'm very curious to see what he is going to look like coming out. But with all that being said, Ryan, which side are you going with here?
I'm going with the American Montel Jackson. This one, watching Figgy's last fight, especially comparing it to his fight against Petr Yan, where Figgy looked so much more active, so much more willing to engage, actually fighting for the win. You saw that God of War like fighter that you saw in his quadrilogy with Brendan Moreno. He's this guy that's he's like beat Alexander Pantoja. He has all these accolades, on his resume. But I think age is this. We're just seeing this guy slow down, as he gets older. And 37, blew out his knee 5 months ago. If he comes out and looks even similarly to the same as he did when he fought Sandhagen from round 1 to when the fight was eventually stopped in round 3, I think everyone's gonna be saying, "Oh my God, Montel Jackson, this guy." It's only a matter of time before he finds the chin or gets a sub or what have you. And I think that's what we're gonna see, unfortunately, Saturday night. I think his last fight against Sandhagen really marked the end of the prime Figgy we've all known and grown to love, being fans of the sport. Father Time comes and collects us all, and I think this is pretty much it for Deiveson Figueiredo's career at this point.
Oh, yeah. Very tough to follow that one up, but unfortunately, I will be going with Deiveson Figueiredo. I don't think I've lost my faith in him yet, especially fighting at home. It definitely does boost you in there 100% when you hear everybody cheering for you. And Deiveson's knee is 100%. I mean, this is fully a long shot play for me here, but I am going Figueiredo. I think he can pull this one out. Montel Jackson's resume in the UFC just hasn't impressed me a crazy amount. I know I've mentioned this to you guys a little bit before the podcast started, but a decision to Daniel Marco is not that impressive. A KO to Damon Blackshear, not that impressive. And then he has a few KOs to some other guys that, aren't really impressive, and a few decision wins against guys that are definitely not impressive. So I just don't think he's done enough, even though he looks really good there in the cage. I think a guy like Deiveson Figueiredo, he brings in his jiu-jitsu, he brings in his submission threat. He can really shut down a guy like Montel Jackson that might be coming very aggressively for him. And a guy with as much experience, as much fight IQ, and as much, fight time in that cage. I think this is a perfect position and a perfect fight for Deiveson to go in there and show him that he's still him. He's still good. Even at 37 years old, I still do have faith in this guy. And he's looked good, man. I'm just not very excited, but I'm very wary of that knee and how that's going to hold up. But I think that's only going to present him the chance of, going to those submission threats in that grapple game more so than standing up and banging, and taking those, leg kicks and whatnot of Montel Jackson. So give me Figgy here. I'm throwing a long shot out there. I'm really hoping he wins this one. I just don't think Montel's done enough and seen enough compared to Figgy.
Yeah, dude. Father Time catches everyone, and I just don't see where Deiveson Figueiredo can pick up this win over Montel Jackson. Montel Jackson's a very good grappler. He's a good striker. He has the output there. He was also 5 inches taller than Deiveson Figueiredo and has a 7.5-inch reach advantage.
Shit.
And with Figgy being at the age he is, it's just such a high mountain to climb. And when you initially see the odds and you see Figgy as an underdog against Montel Jackson and how big it is, you're like, oh man, Figgy, like the former champ Figgy. And then the more you look into the fight, you're just like, fuck. This doesn't, it's like literally every single statistic metric you look at. If Figgy wants to get it done, I mean, he has that championship mentality. He's climbed that mountain before. Figgy will really need to dig deep, but I just think it's such a tough task here at hand. And with all that being said, I got to go with Montel Jackson here. And now moving on to the main event of the evening, we have a lightweight bout between Charles Oliveira taking on Mateusz Gamrot. Oliveira, ranked 4th, is coming off that tough knockout loss to Ilia Topuria back in July. Opposing him, Mateusz Gamrot recently picked up a decent win not too long ago. I don't know why I blanking on the names, and I kind of forgot to put who he fought in my notes here, so I am not too happy with myself. But with that being said, Ryan, seems like you know who it is, so take the floor from here.
Yeah, Gamrot's last fight. Ludovic Klein, if you're looking for Ludovic Klein.
Yep.
But enough about Gamrot. Let's talk about Charles Oliveira for a second. Hometown hero, Charles Du Bronx, got flatlined back in June to Ilia Topuria.
July, I think
Maybe
it was
even
beginning of
July.
July.
Beginning of July. Even worse. So it was the first time he's been slept unconscious like that in his entire career, at 35 years old. But besides that, his original opponent was supposed to be Rafael Fiziev, and had Rafael Fiziev been standing across Charles Oliveira in the octagon come Saturday night, I probably would be sitting on this podcast going with Rafael Fiziev. I don't know what angel Charles has on his side, but I feel like this is a much more favorable matchup for Charles Oliveira and Mateusz Gamrot, especially knowing that while anyone can get caught in this sport, chances are a lot lower than when it's Gamrot sitting across from you as opposed to Rafael Fiziev. And I think it's just going to come down, you're going to see a lot of 6 scrambles. It's going to be touch and play on the feet, and it's just going to get to the ground. We're going to see a lot of slick submission attempts, a lot of scrambles, and I think Charles will be able to come out on the better side of just about all of those. So I'm taking Charles Oliveira either by unanimous decision, like a 48-46 type deal, 45 or 48-47, or I could see him getting that guillotine in, later in the fight. Teja shoots one sloppy takedown and Charles just latches that thing up and sinks it in. So I really am confident in Charles Oliveira by sub here.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, Ryan. I think Charles is the easy pick for me. Even if he was fighting Fiziev, I would have loved those underdog odds even more had he been the underdog. What did worry me a little bit coming into this fight was that Gamrot was being called to step in, and Charles didn't really want it, or at least in the interviews he was taking it, he was saying he didn't really want it. But for fair reasons. I mean, he was fighting and training his camps for a guy that was fully, a pure striker basically, in Fiziev, and now you got to go and prepare for a grappler. And then I think Charles just went there and remembered, I'm the best grappler this division's ever seen. So I don't think he really needs to worry about that at all. And to your point, Ryan, I think he's in an even better position here after coming out of that loss from Ilia Topuria. He's not going to get and run that risk of taking those big hits to the head against a guy like Mateusz Gamrot, who's going to go for more takedowns, who might even be on his back foot most of the time. So I can definitely see Charles having the advantage both on the striking department and in the grappling department. And I think ultimately once that striking starts to shine and come through for Charles, Gamrot might be going for those sloppy takedowns. If not, Charles is going to be going for those takedowns himself and be able to get it done. Not to mention, I think every fighter is, the record is currently like undefeated for fighters that have gotten, killed by Ilia Topuria. They win their next fight, which I absolutely love. So I'm slamming Charles Oliveira here. I would love a finish out of him. I'm feeling very confident. And, mentioned a little bit, but, Charles taking on Gamrot on short notice, yeah, it kind of throws a wrench in his plan. Imagine being Gamrot right now. You have to take Charles Oliveira on short notice, when you haven't even had a camp at all. So I think he's clearly outmatched here. I think these odds are kind of crazy how close they are. And I see a very dominant win for Charles here this weekend.
Yeah, boys. Do Bronx, huh? I'm going Mateusz Gamrot. Fuck it,
yes,
boys. Here's where my mind goes a little bit. Who's the better striker? Charles do Bronx Oliveira is the better striker. I do expect Charles Oliveira to win the striking exchanges. Although I'm curious to see how aggressive he's going to be coming off that. And he's never been put out like that. I'm curious to see how aggressive he's going to be. What's going to happen when you get back in that octagon? Because you hear a lot of people talk about after being flatlined and coming back in, and they're like, I thought it was fine. Then I got in there, and all of a sudden, like, I wasn't throwing like I wanted to be throwing. It just wasn't really working like how I wanted it to work. So I'm curious to see how aggressive Charles Oliveira does look to be, because at the end of the day, man, all these guys are professional MMA fighters in the UFC. Anyone can put you out, right? Let's be real there. And then you look at the grappling. Mateusz Gamrot has some big wins. I mean, he has wins over Arman Tsarukyan, who we've seen what he can do. And I think the submission is extremely alive here for Charles Oliveira. But Gamrot's going to be winning minutes. Gamrot's going to be winning minutes with control and whatnot. And Charles needs to get close to finishing Gamrot in order to win. I think he's going to need to get close to finishing Gamrot in order to win some of these rounds, because otherwise it's going to be very similar to what we saw against Arman Tsarukyan. Charles Oliveira is fine with being taken down. Gamrot has that, I know he's a Polish man, but he has that like American style of wrestling, of that traditional like folk style wrestling with control and whatnot, where usually overseas they have freestyle, Greco. There's no such thing as top game. Gamrot does have a good top control game. So I think Gamrot's path to victory is just trying to control Charles Oliveira and win rounds, which I think he very well can do, similar to what Arman Tsarukyan did against Charles Oliveira. But Arman Tsarukyan also lost rounds by almost getting submitted. So it's tricky to weigh out what a close submission is to getting controlled for 5 minutes. But that's where I see Mateusz Gamrot going with this fight. I think he's going to look to clinch up with Oliveira, take Oliveira down, control Oliveira on the ground, win minutes there. Just try to stay tight, keep your arms tight, not let any weird arm bar or something get through, limit Charles' game from his guard and whatnot. So I see that route to victory for Gamrot. I want Oliveira this way. It's a win-win for me. I get my pick right. I'm a little happy. Charles Oliveira wins. Fuck it. We can party a little bit, drink some whiskey. Who the fuck knows, boys? But with all that being said, that's all I got. I don't know if either of you have something you want to add or if we're ready to get on out of here.
Now, as far as MMA is concerned, I am done. But look at Drake May, man. So inspirational. But I'll just leave it at that.
Fuck off.
Oh, boy, this guy. But for everyone still listening, thank you for tuning in, and I hope you have a great weekend of fights. Let's fucking go. Oh. The problem is I almost just fucking left the studio instead of stopping the recording.